All right, today we are digging into a story that, honestly, it completely rewrites a huge chapter of human history. It all starts in this one cave in Iraq, but it leads us to some incredible revelations. We're talking about the skeletons of Shanidar Cave.
So when I say the word Neanderthal, what's the first image that pops into your head? For most of us, it's something like this, right? The classic hunched-over caveman. You know, this primitive caricature that's been stuck in our pop culture for, well, forever.
But is that really the whole story? Is that caricature anywhere close to the truth? Well, as it turns out, evidence that was uncovered over 60 years ago and is still being analyzed today suggests we've had it wrong, like really wrong.
Okay, so let's get into it. Let's dive into the clues that were left behind in Shanidar Cave. We're going back about 65,000 years. A group of Neanderthals lived here. And what they left behind? Well, it's forcing us to completely rethink who they were. So our first clue, our first piece of evidence, comes from one specific individual, a skeleton designated Shanidar 1, who the archaeologists gave the nickname Nandy. Now take a look at this. The thing about Nandy is the sheer number of really debilitating injuries he was living with. I mean, he had a crushing blow to his head that probably left him blind in one eye. His right arm was withered and basically useless and had been since childhood. He had crippling arthritis in his feet, and, to top it all off, he was likely half-deaf. Now think about that. In a harsh, prehistoric world, any one of those things should have been a death sentence.
And yet, he didn't just survive for a few weeks or months. Nansaranti lived to be between 40 and 50 years old. For a Neanderthal living at that time, that's practically an elder statesman.
So that brings us to the big question, right? How? I mean, how on earth did he possibly survive? How could someone so severely disabled, someone who couldn't hunt effectively, who couldn't defend himself properly, how did he survive for decades in such a dangerous world?
The answer is as simple as it is profound. He was cared for. There's just no other way. The only way Nandy could have survived that long is if his group, his family, protected him and fed him and supported him. Now that's not the behavior of a savage, is it? That is solid evidence of empathy, of compassion, of really complex social bonds.
But compassion isn't the whole story here. The picture is more complicated than that. Our next clue, which comes from an individual known as Shanidar 3, adds let's say, a more violent layer to their lives. Yeah, so the skeleton of Shanidar 3 shows a deep, traumatic injury to his ribs. Archaeologists are pretty sure it was caused by a projectile weapon, like a spear thrown from a distance. It's a pretty clear sign that their world was, well, it wasn't always peaceful.
And this is where this story gets even more interesting, more complex. The wound, it points to conflict, right? Maybe with another group of Neanderthals, or maybe even with early modern humans. But the bone also shows clear signs of healing. He didn't die right away. In fact, he lived for weeks after being stabbed. And what does that mean? It means that, just like Nandy, someone must have been caring for him, helping him recover even from a violent attack. It's just incredible.
Okay, now for the final and maybe the most famous piece of this whole puzzle. We're talking about the individual known as Shanidar 4. And this discovery is at the center of a massive, decades-long scientific debate.
So, when the lead archaeologist, a guy named Ralph Selecki, was excavating Shanidar 4, his team found something totally unexpected. They found huge amounts of flower pollen in the soil right around the skeleton. His conclusion was, well, it was revolutionary. He said this must have been a deliberate burial with flowers, a symbolic, maybe even a ritualistic act, something that suggested abstract thought, belief beyond just survival.
But this idea was hugely controversial. For decades, skeptics pushed back hard. They argued, well, maybe the pollen was just brought in by burrowing rodents, or, hey, maybe the flowers were just used as medicine and had no symbolic meaning at all. The scientific community was completely split. Was this a beautiful, profound ritual, or was it just a coincidence? Well, guess what? Recent re-excavations and some amazing new technology have finally given us a much clearer answer. Modern analysis shows the pollen wasn't just scattered randomly like you'd expect with rodents. It appeared in distinct clumps, which is really consistent with whole flower heads being placed on the grave. And get this, while the flowers did have medicinal properties, they were also brightly colored. This suggests a choice that went beyond pure practicality. The evidence now is leaning heavily in favor of Selecki's original radical idea. So, let's step back for a second. When we put all these clues from Shanidar Cave together,
The compassion, the violence, the healing, the ritual. What kind of picture emerges? I can tell you, it's a far, far cry from that old caveman stereotype.
Think about it. The old myth gave us this solitary, savage brute. But the reality, the one revealed by the bones of Shanidar, it shows us a socially cooperative relative. Instead of being uncaring and primitive, we find this incredible evidence of empathy and compassion. And instead of being intellectually simple, we see these fascinating signs of symbolic thought, of ritual, of a mind that was reaching for something more than just survival.
Ultimately, the discoveries at this one single cave just completely upended our understanding. They transformed Neanderthals from these simple, brutish caricatures into what they really were, our complex, caring, and, deeply human relatives.
And that really leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? If one cave, just one small group of skeletons, could so radically change everything we thought we knew, what else don't we know? What other incredible stories are still buried out there, just waiting to be discovered, about the long-lost members of our own human family?